Hello and welcome to Salt and Light's Top 10 Catholic Stories of 2017. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sebastian Gomes.
And I'm Noel Ocol.
And if you're a regular viewer of Salt and Light, you've seen our year in review shows that look back at the biggest headlines and events of the past year in the Catholic Church. Well, this year we're going to do something a little bit different.
That's right, Sebastian. There's always some debate amongst us all at the office about the biggest stories, the most significant quote from the Pope, and etc., etc. But this year we got together and ranked what we believe to be the top 10 Catholic news stories for the year. And a huge thanks goes out to our friends at the Catholic News Service in Washington, D.C. for some of the videos that we're going to share with you today. Now, it's probably no surprise that all of our picks have something to do with the Pope.
Yeah, I laughed when I first realized that, but then I said it went a little bit deeper. Yes, the stories that we selected are connected to the Pope in some way, but that's because Francis is very keen on getting involved in the major issues affecting the world today. Most of the time, he's the global figure who's outspoken on the environment, the refugee crisis, interfaith dialogue. I mean, those are the biggest stories, and the Pope isn't afraid to get the Church involved.
That's very true, Sebastian. I certainly can't argue with you on that. Now, we do have a lot to cover in today's show, so let's jump right in. But remember, send us a tweet or a Facebook message. Heck, you can even connect with us on Instagram. We'd love to hear what you think the biggest Catholic stories are. So here we go, folks. Salt and Light's top 10 Catholic news stories for 2017. Now, you can imagine that it's not every day that the crew of the International Space Station gets a call from Earth, and certainly not from a guy like the Pope. But that's exactly what happened on October 26th when the Pope himself made a historic call to the crew that was orbiting Earth 400 kilometers directly above us. This is our pick for the number 10 story of 2017, and here are highlights of that historic conversation that was all over the world press.
PAO here in the Vatican, how can you hear me?
Jules is a PO in the Vatican. This is a space station. We hear you loud and clear.
Che cosa vi ha motivato a diventare astronauti? Che cosa maggiormente vi dà gioia nel tempo che passate nella stazione spaziale?
And Your Holiness, in my personal opinion, what gives me the greatest joy every day is being able to look outside and see God's creation, maybe a little bit from his perspective. People cannot come up here and see the indescribable beauty of our earth and not be touched in their souls.
Thank you to Pope Francis and all participants. Station, we are now resuming normal operational communications.
Okay, let's keep going. Number 9, the Canadian bishops hold their ad limina visits in Rome. Every 5 years, bishops from a country will go to Rome on pilgrimage to the tombs of Peter and Paul, and they'll visit the Pope in the main offices of the Roman Curia along the way. The last time the Canadian bishops went was 2006, so they were way overdue. So in the spring, 4 regional groups made the trip: the Atlantic region, the bishops from Western Canada, the Ontario region, and the bishops from Quebec. What did they talk to the Pope about? Well, the big issues across the board, not surprisingly, were the Church's relationship to Indigenous communities and a possible papal visit to Canada in 2018 or 2019. Immigration, something every country is trying to cope with. The role of women in the Church, that's a big one. But of course, the biggest issue was conscience rights surrounding the legalization of assisted dying in Canada. Here are a few bishops from the Atlantic region speaking about it right after their meeting with Pope Francis.
Making their ad limina visits to Rome, the bishops of Canada's Atlantic region celebrated masses in the city's major basilicas, starting with the Basilica of St. John Lateran.
You know, it's the first church in the Western world, the first cathedral, the Cathedral of the Pope. So it was really an important moment for us in our pilgrimage.
The bishops explained to the Pope and Vatican officials the pastoral guidelines they have issued in response to the country's legalization of physician-assisted suicide.
Well, palliative care came up a good deal in terms of how we as church need to be in the forefront of that, and that is us being pro-life. It's us saying, life is valuable, and we're willing to value it and assist people in finding value in it.
The Alberta bishops and Northwest Territories issued a wonderful letter to highlight how to approach the issue of assisted suicide. Quebec bishops also gave some background. The group in Saskatchewan did it as well, and so did we. And so each area has been providing pastoral letters to give people an approach to how do we accompany people who are in very difficult situations and who are at a time when they feel like they need to give up their life. And so there's a real sense of trying to accompany people with real compassion and real truth in our faith.
It means being there with the people, sharing with them, trying to meet with them where they're at, trying to help them to see a perspective. Like, I mean, somebody who's looking at killing themselves is saying that they don't feel their life is worthwhile, trying to help them to realize how precious they are to God and that He's there with them.
The number 8 story on our top 10 list shows that the Pope isn't afraid to tackle the most difficult and seemingly impossible of world problems. Stop treating hunger like it was an incurable disease. That was the message that he gave the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN when he visited them back in October to mark the World Food Day. Here's a throwback to that story that reminded the world that it's climate change and war that leads to hunger and migration. Have a look.
La relación entre el hambre y las migraciones solo se puede afrontar si vamos a la raíz del problema. Son dos los principales obstáculos que hay que superar: los conflictos y los cambios climáticos. ¿Cómo se pueden superar los conflictos? Se necesita buena voluntad y diálogo para frenar los conflictos y un compromiso total en favor de un desarme gradual y sistemático previsto por la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, así como para remediar la funesta plaga del tráfico de armas. ¿De qué vale denunciar que a causa de los conflictos millones de personas sean víctimas del hambre y de la desnutrición si no se actúa eficazmente en aras de la paz y del desarme? En cuanto a los cambios climáticos, vemos sus consecuencias todos los días. Estamos llamados a proponer un cambio en los estilos de vida, en el uso de los recursos, en los criterios de producción, hasta en el consumo, que en lo que respecta a los alimentos presenta un aumento de las pérdidas y el desperdicio. No podemos conformarnos con decir otro lo hará. Pienso que estos son los presupuestos de cualquier discurso serio sobre la seguridad alimentaria relacionada con el fenómeno de las migraciones. Está claro que las guerras y los cambios climáticos ocasionan el hambre. Evitemos, pues, el presentarla como una enfermedad incurable.
2017 was the year of some major papal visits. We saw the Pope go to Egypt in April, Portugal in May, and recently Myanmar and Bangladesh at the end of November. But it was the Pope's visit to Colombia in September that made it to number 7 on our list. And why? Because that papal visit was predicated on the promise that he would come and visit that country once a peace deal was reached between the government and the FARC rebels, effectively ending a war that had tormented that country for 50 years. Here is what the Pope himself said about that trip to a Catholic country that was hesitant to offer forgiveness to each other after decades of mistrust, violence, and war.
Nei giorni scorsi ho compiuto il viaggio apostolico in Colombia. Tra le tante sofferenze, ma gioioso, popolo con speranza. Una delle cose che più mi ha colpito, tutte le città, la folla e dentro la folla, entre la folla, i papà e le mamme con i bambini, che alzavano i bambini perché il Papa le benedicesse, ma anche con orgoglio facevano vedere i propri bambini, i loro bambini, come dicendo questo è il nostro orgoglio, questa è la nostra speranza. Io ho pensato, un popolo capace di fare bambini e capace di farli vedere con orgoglio, come speranza, questo popolo ha futuro.
Moving right along, number 6, Pope Francis calls for updating the Church's teaching on the death penalty. Remember, this was a speech he gave at the Vatican in October for the 25th anniversary of the promulgation of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Francis spoke plainly, saying that today the death penalty is inadmissible, contrary to the gospel, and must be given a more adequate treatment than is currently outlined in the Catechism. The Catechism states right now that the death penalty is admissible in certain cases to protect other people and the common good, although JP2 said that those cases are very rare, if not practically non-existent. This is actually a huge story because it's a practical example of what we call a development of doctrine. It's not that the principle of human dignity has changed, it's that we're understanding it better. And that leads us to see, according to Francis, that using the death penalty cannot be justified ever. Most of the speech actually is Francis explaining what development of doctrine really means. And you can find that speech on our blog. It is really important to have a look at it. Now, this is obviously a more pertinent issue for our friends in the United States. So here's one American bishop explaining why the Church opposes the death penalty altogether.
These are not innocent individuals about which I'm speaking. That still doesn't give us the right to take their life. We have the means to protect society from them, and there's no need for this death penalty. I think we saw a very unfortunate situation in Arkansas recently, where they were scheduled to execute 8 individuals. In the end, it didn't end up being that, but it was simply because the expiration date of the drug was running out. The U.S. bishops for decades now have spoken out against the death penalty. By saving the life of someone, we don't say, he's forgiven. We say, let's not take this life. And we empathize with the suffering that those victims and their families have. Every human being has an innate value. If we believe in that made in the image and likeness of God, even that individual who for some reason goes off track in their life, we still have to look to that image of God, search for it within every individual.
Okay, so now we've reached the halfway point of our top 10 list of Catholic stories for 2017.
And if you're just joining us right now, here's a quick recap of what we've covered so far.
Number 10, the Pope calls International Space Station.
Number 9, the Canadian bishops travel to Rome for their ad limina visits.
8, the Pope's speech to the UN Food and Agricultural Organization in Rome.
Number 7, Pope Francis goes to Colombia to promote peace and reconciliation.
And number 6, the Pope calls for an update to the Catechism on the death penalty. Our number 5 story takes us to Egypt, where mere weeks before the Pope's visit to that country in April, the world witnessed suicide bombs in 2 Christian churches that left 44 dead and another 100 injured. Then weeks after the Pope's visit, a brutal massacre of 29 Coptic Christians traveling to a monastery in Egypt in May.
amante della vita, non cessa di amare l'uomo e per questo lo esorta a contrastare la vita della violenza, quale presupposto fondamentale di ogni alleanza sulla terra. Ad attuare questo imperativo sono chiamate anzitutto e oggi in particolare le religioni, perché mentre ci troviamo nell'urgente bisogno dell'assoluto, è imprescindibile escludere qualsiasi assolutazione che giustifichi forme di violenza. La violenza, infatti, è la negazione di ogni autentica religiosità.
وكيف شهد عصر حقوق الإنسان من الأعمال الهمجية ما لم يشهده عصر من قبل. والإجابة التي أعتقد أن حضراتكم توافقونني عليها هي تجاهل الحضارة الحديثة للأديان الإلهية.
We're getting down to the top 3 Catholic stories of 2017, but first, number 4, the war against Pope Francis. Yep, that's right. Over the past 5 years, resistance to Francis has bubbled up in the Catholic world to the point that certain groups, especially here in North America, have accused him of propagating heresy, and some have even issued public corrections of his teaching. Now, most of the criticism is over Francis's 2016 apostolic exhortation Amoris Laetitia, in which he insinuates that some divorced and remarried couples could potentially receive communion. That, of course, would be a shift from previous papal teaching. While it is a small number of Catholics who have difficulties with Francis, there are some high-profile figures in the group. The public opposition has gotten so loud that in November, the president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, issued a statement pledging support and loyalty to Francis. Now, the opposition is often veiled in defense of orthodoxy, so here are a few common threads to look for when you come across it. Vatican II tends to be criticized for exactly the same reasons as Francis. Francis is said to have disdain for doctrine because for him the Christian life is about more than just following a list of rules. Accusations against Francis are often justified by saying he's causing confusion among the faithful. Francis's denunciations of clericalism are deemed harsh and misguided. This is a big one. These Catholics do not like the Pope's critique of global capitalism. And finally, the opposition to Francis never really explains how his ministry deviates from the pastoral approach of Jesus in the Gospels. Now, all of that to say, we should point out that inside and outside the Church, Francis is beloved and respected by almost everyone. To the world, he's a man of peace and enormous moral credibility. What impact does this have on Francis himself? We don't know. Our sources close to him say he's very peaceful, he's aware of the critics, but he's absolutely determined to implement the vision of Vatican II. This story will definitely continue in 2018. We'll see how it develops.
Now, we're just a few moments away from the top 3 Catholic stories of 2017, but remember, we want to hear from you too, so let us know what you think the biggest news stories of the past year are, and connect with us on Twitter or send us a message on Facebook or Instagram.
All right, we have 3 stories left on our top 10 list. Here we go with number 3, the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. Hard to believe, it was 500 years ago, on October 31st, 1517, that Martin Luther nailed his infamous 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg, Germany. That triggered a series of events that led to Luther's excommunication and the split of Western Christendom. To mark the commemoration, Pope Francis journeyed to Lund, Sweden last year to participate in an ecumenical prayer service and to sign a joint Catholic-Lutheran declaration. But what can we reasonably expect to come from ecumenical dialogue after 500 years of separation? Is there anything different about Francis's approach to Christian unity? Ecumenical discussions often focus on our theological disagreements, but for Francis, God is capable of surprising us always. So for the Pope, it's much more about the journey than the destination, as he explained at Rome's Anglican Church last February.
Il suo predecessore, Papa Benedetto XVI, ha messo in guardia circa il rischio nel dialogo ecumenico di dare la priorità alla collaborazione dell'azione sociale, anziché seguire il cammino più esigente dell'accordo teologico. A quanto pare lei sembra preferire il contrario, cioè camminare e lavorare insieme per raggiungere la meta dell'unità dei cristiani, è vero?
Credo che quello che ha detto Papa Benedetto è vero, si deve cercare il dialogo teologico per cercare anche le radici, ma sui sacramenti, tante cose che ancora non ci siamo d'accordo, no? Ma questo non si può fare in laboratorio, si deve fare camminando, in via. Noi siamo in cammino e in cammino facciamo anche queste discussioni, i teologi lo fanno, no? Ma nel frattempo noi ci aiutiamo, noi, uno all'altro, nelle nostre necessità, nella nostra vita, anche spiritualmente ci aiutiamo, no? E ci aiutiamo nel servizio della carità, nel servizio dei poveri, negli ospedali, ma nelle guerre, no? È tanto importante questo. Non si può fare dialogo ecumenico fermi, no. Il dialogo ecumenico si fa in cammino, perché il dialogo ecumenico è un cammino e le cose teologiche si discutono in cammino.
And finally, we get to our number 2 story of 2017. It was an event that millions of Catholics around the world had been anxiously waiting for many decades. When the Pope went to Portugal in May to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Marian apparition of Fatima, he canonized into sainthood young Francisco and Jacinta Marto after many months of speculation. And here's how it all went down.
Nos congregamos aquí para agradecer as bênçãos sem conta que o céu concedeu nestes 100 anos passados sob o referido manto da luz que Nossa Senhora, a partir deste esperançoso Portugal, estendeu sobre os 4 cantos da terra. Como exemplo, temos diante los olhos São Francisco Marto e Santa Jacinta, a quem a Virgem Maria introduziu no mar imenso da luz de Deus e aí os levou a adorá-lo. Da qui les vinha a força para superar contrariedades e sofrimentos. A presença divina tornou-se constante nas suas vidas, como se manifesta claramente na súplica instante pelos pecadores e no desejo permanente de estar junto a Jesus escondido no sacrário.
That visit and the whole experience of Fatima is about peace in the world, so it was certainly important for Francis, who is a global peacemaker and has a great devotion to Mary, to go there. Okay, here we are, the #1 Catholic news story of 2017. Drum roll, please. Pope Francis visits Myanmar. This was the first ever visit of a pope to the country, and it couldn't have happened at a more politically charged moment, as accusations of ethnic cleansing were leveled against the Myanmar military, who are Buddhists, for driving hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims from Rakhine State into neighboring Bangladesh. It became an international controversy in the latter part of 2017, and many called on Francis to condemn the military's actions when he arrived in late November. But the Catholic Church on the ground, only 1% of the total population, advised the Pope differently. not to even use the word Rohingya during his visit. It was a good example of how the Pope respects the voice of local churches who understand the social and political reality better than he does, and they're the ones who have to live in it. But that didn't stop Francis from speaking clearly about the importance of religious diversity. The truth is, he walked a very tight rope and succeeded in fostering respect and dialogue in an impossible situation.
May I announce the arrival of His Holiness Pope Francis and Her Excellency Dawn San Suu Kyi.
Myanmar è stato benedetto con il dono di una straordinaria bellezza e di numerose risorse naturali, ma il suo tesoro più grande è certamente il suo popolo, che ha molto sofferto e tuttora soffre a causa di conflitti interni e di ostilità che sono durate troppo a lungo e hanno creato profonde divisioni. Nel grande lavoro della riconciliazione e dell'integrazione nazionale, le comunità religiose del Myanmar hanno un ruolo privilegiato da svolgere. Le differenze religiose non devono essere fonte di divisione e di diffidenza, ma piuttosto una forza per l'unità, per il perdono, per la tolleranza e la saggia costruzione del Paese. Le religioni possono svolgere un ruolo significativo nella guarigione delle ferite emotive, spirituali e psicologiche di quanto hanno sofferto negli anni di conflitto. Attingendo ai valori profondamente radicati, esse possono aiutare ad estirpare le cause del conflitto, costruire ponti di dialogo, ricercare la giustizia ed essere voce profetica per quanti soffrono.
Well, there you have it, folks, our top 10 Catholic stories for 2017. Now, it's certainly not the only stories that we covered over the year, so why not visit our blog to see the other major headlines that didn't make the show.
And we should note that the news of President Trump's announcement to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel was still developing when we filmed this show, but a good analysis can be found in our blog with some of the other stories that didn't make the cut today. So be sure to check that out, and remember to tweet us, send us a message on Facebook or Instagram with your top Catholic story of 2017. We love to get your take on all things Catholic.
And finally now, from all of us here at Salt and Light, we wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.